we need to have a very serious conversation about Liverpool coming into this upcoming season. The club has gone through lots of change over the last season. Legends and staples of the club of the better part of a decade, Andy Robertson and Mo Salah, have left the club. Arne Slot has finally gotten the sack and has been replaced by ex-Bournemouth coach Adoni Iraola, and even the ownership of the club has changed since the end of last season. But this isn't why I think we will be struggling going into next season. I mean, there are plenty of reasons as to why I think we may struggle next season, but I think the main one has to be our squad depth. A couple of injuries, especially in the defense, and I think we are genuinely finished. Starting off in goals, we have like three main options: Woodman, Mamardashvili, and Alisson. Starting off with Woodman, sure, he was pretty good at the end of last season when we needed him due to the injuries from both Alisson and Mamardashvili, but I would be very hesitant going into next season with him being our starting keeper. And then we have Alisson, the most injury-prone goalkeeper of all time. He missed 26 games last year, 28 the year before, and 19 the year before that. And I know that AI is not the most reliable thing in the world, but it has estimated that Alisson has missed at least 80 games throughout his Liverpool career. And he's been at the club for 8 years, which means on average he has missed 10 games a year, which is quite a lot for a keeper. And this is why I think that Mamardashvili is going to be our starting number one goalkeeper going into next season. At the end of the season, there is many links that Alisson was going to be, exiting the club, with mainly Juventus, targeting them. But even though all that talk has now seemed to die out, I think it's still clear that the plan has been, for the last couple of years, for Mamardashvili to overtake Alisson and take his mantle going into this season. And I'm just going to put this out there. That worries me. Now, I know Mamardashvili can be a very good keeper. He was amazing in the Euros in 2024. I think that's why Liverpool decided to pull the trigger on him in the first place. But his time in a Liverpool shirt has not been the greatest. I'll leave it at that. He has made some good saves to give him that, but his main problem is his ball distribution. He always looks like stressed and rushed whenever the ball is at his feet, and additionally, he does not really like to come out of his goal and become a sweeper keeper, much like Alisson did back in the day. And I have no doubt that Mamardashvili has the ability to be one of the best goalkeepers in the world. I'm just not exactly confident with him this season. It's not like the defense will be able to provide much cover either. Firstly, I would like to point out that for what we have seen from Iraola at Bournemouth, he seems to be able to manage a pretty decent defense. Last season he lost his two starting centre-backs in Dean Huijsen and Zabani, and also Kirkes, who he now has access to at Liverpool. And he was able to replace those players with Trufer Senesi, who has now also made his way onto Tottenham. And even with all that, he was still able to keep a very solid defense. And maybe it was even better than what it was before, because he managed to get Bournemouth the very first European spot, at least that I can remember. However, I don't think this really matters too much, because we barely even have enough players to fill out a whole back line anyway. So to start the season at left back, we have Milos Kerkez and Tsimikas. Kerkez was insane under Iraola just 2 seasons ago. However, he was quite mediocre for Liverpool last season. However, I do have hope for him to, get back to his, Bournemouth form under Iraola this season. Tsimikas, bro, how is he still here after all these years? Like, he's been there for almost 10 years now. Last season, he went on loan to Roma, and it's no surprise that they didn't want him, and now he's back to us. I can't lie, hopefully nothing happens to Kerkez, because I do not want to see Kostas Tsimikas in the starting 11 ever again. And now on the right side, we have Jeremy Frimpong and Conor Bradley. Now, I do like these two players. They both offer something, different and unique from each other. However, Bradley is currently injured at the moment. Frimpong has been quite poor defensively, in the last year. And, his whole career pretty much. He's more of a winger than a right back, if anything. And unfortunately, it's not like the centre backs will be able to provide him with too much cover, because as you all know, Virgil van Dijk is only getting older. And we've also now lost Konate on a free to Real Madrid. I wonder who we're going to lose next season. We now have to rely on the unproven and currently injured Giovanni Leone, who, to be fair, I do really like. And also the other unproven player that we just signed, Jeremy Jack. Now, I do have hope that both of these two guys will eventually become very good for us in the future, but I'm not exactly too confident going into the season with any of these two starting and game in and game out for us. And I guess we also have Joe Gomez, who could fill in that position as well, but let's be honest, he's also injury prone and getting on a bit as well. And now they move on to part of the squad which I actually have confidence in, and that is the midfield. In the midfield we have Dominic Szoboszlai, who has just come off his best season ever. And I don't want to see any right back nonsense with him next season. I only want to see him in the midfield. Oh, hi Millie. I'm trying to record a video. Can you get out of the way? Thank you. Okay, where was I? Wirtz has also been slowly improving throughout his entire Liverpool stay so far. And he also had a pretty decent World Cup, a bit underrated as well, I would say, because Germany got knocked out a bit early. But yeah, I think Wirtz is, on track to have like a 30 GA season coming into the season, which is a big call considering he got like less than 10 last season, but I can definitely see it happening. Trainioni also looks very good and a very solid, rotational / backup player. And along with him we have Bajcetic, who I actually hope to see get, a bit more game time this season. I don't know where he's been like the last few seasons. I think he's been on loan. But I remember a few seasons ago he really impressed me. So hopefully Iraola can, link up with him because they're both Spanish. And of course Gravenberch is also a very good player, as we know. He didn't have the best of seasons last time out, but I think Iraola will definitely be able to get the best out of him, just like we saw with him and Alex Scott last season at Bournemouth. And then we have McAllister. We know how good he can be. It's just a question of whether or not... Okay, hi Millie again. It's just a question of whether or not he, has still got it. Because even though he covered like the most distance at the entire World Cup, which is a big shock to me, we all know that, for the better part of last season, he was barely able to keep up with like anyone. And also needing to go to Turkey at the ripe age of 27 is quite rough. And finally, we have Curtis Jones. A lot of people want to see him go, and I would be happy, for the right price. However, I think he is still a top quality player and a good player to have just in case the other options get injured. But now we move on to the attack, and we'll start off with the right wing position. As we all know, Mo Salah has left that position vacant for us. And would you look at that, it is still very much vacant. Sure, Chiesa could play there, but he is nowhere near enough to be a starter. And maybe Rio, Munoz, or even Gakpo could, move to the right wing position. But I think for at least Gakpo and Rio, we all know that the left is definitely their best position. Can't really speak of Munoz though. And we all linked to Bradley Barcola as well, I guess. And it is for like 125 million. To me, he's just kind of like a more fancy Cody Gakpo. He can dribble a lot more than him, but he has so much worse finishing. Like, I guarantee you that if he moves to the Prem next season, he's gonna have definitely less than 10 goals in all competition. I mean, he only got 13 last year, and he plays in Ligue 1. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, he's also primarily a left winger. And speaking of the left wing, we have Gakpo, who did have a very good season 2 seasons ago. And he did, also start quite strong last season as well. But, when the rest of the squad, decided to play like shit, so did Cody. But hopefully, if we can, find some good form, Gakpo can also, turn it up this season as well. Because I definitely think he has it in him. And with Rio, I definitely want to see more of him next season. I think he's such a promising player. And however many, games Gakpo plays, I want to see Rio at least, matching that or slightly under. Because we don't want, what happened to Pedri to happen to Rio. Then with Munoz, I mentioned before, I just haven't seen him play like at all. But he is a World Cup winner, so he must be pretty good, right? And now we move on to the striker position. We of course have Alexander Isak, who has just come off of the back of an injury. However, prior to the injury, he was also very poor. And, you know, at the World Cup, there were like glimpses of, you know, me thinking that maybe he could be back. But for what we have seen in pre-season, he has just, you know, gone back to being like complete, like unfit, and seems like a complete shadow of his former self. And to back him up, I guess Chiesa could also play there as well. As I said before, he is also quite like unfit. And although he is, you know, quite like a likable player and also quite clutch at times, I don't think we can really rely on him to get us to goals, you know, week in and week out. And then finally we have, in my opinion, our best player last season, Big Hugo Ekitike, which I had the pleasure of actually seeing him get his, you know, big injury live in the flesh against Paris Saint-Germain. So yeah, he is out injured for at least the first half of the season. I'm sure it will probably take him quite a bit of time to, you know, recover from the injury and, you know, get back into the goals. Who knows whether he will still be the same player when he comes back, because as we know, these type of injuries can really, you know, derail a player's career. So yeah, I'm just not too sure who's going to be scoring the goals for us next season. But we could always buy more players, right? Well, I'll just look at last season. We broke the Premier League transfer record not once, but twice in one window, and just look how that turned out. Look, I know I've painted a pretty grim picture here, but there's one thing about Liverpool Football Club. You can never truly count us out. Even when it looks like, you know, we're going to have a terrible season, we can always count on the boys to always try their hardest and, you know, fight for the badge. And to be fair, there's also quite a few things that I am excited for next season. First off is Adoni Iraola. He's like a tactical mastermind when it comes to like high octane, you know, high energy football, like we saw with Klopp. At Bournemouth, he turned his team into such an attacking threat. He turned players like Anton Semenyo into world-class players, and even players like Krupi and Ryan look like they are about to, you know, truly announce themselves as well. And if Iraola can, you know, get this squad to work for him, just like he did at Bournemouth, I can't see any reason why our players can't do the same. So are we walking a dangerous fine line going into the upcoming season? 100%. A couple of key injuries here and there, especially at centre back or even up top, could turn this season into an extremely uphill battle very quickly. But if Iraola can get his, you know, structure at Bournemouth and implement it well in this Liverpool squad, I can't see any reason why we can't be good this season, especially with all the young talent that we do possess. And, you know, I also wouldn't be too upset if we do also go on ahead and buy a few more defensive or offensive options either. So yeah, what do you guys think? Are you guys worried about like our depth at all, or is it just like me? And please put all your thoughts in the comments below. And just remember, you'll never walk alone.